Hey, how are we doing today, guys? I'm Evan Kahn.
I'm Rylan Clarkson,
We'll be your host today, and this is TC Talks.
the podcast where we talk to TC and TC talks back.
How are we doing today?
I'm doing really good.
Good.
We're here with our guests today, Mr. and Mrs. Ridge. Mr. Ridge is the choir director at the middle school, and Mrs. Ridge is both the high school and middle school choir director as well.
So how are we doing today?
Great. Doing great. Doing great. Excited to be here.
Good. So, I think we'll dive in with our first question. Like, what kind of drove you to be choir teachers in the first place?
I actually, my dream job when I was in college was elementary music,
Okay.
and I did that for 3 years, and I loved it. And then this job became available, and it was closer to home, so I took it, and I've loved teaching high school choir ever since. So.
When I was in high school, I thought I would be going into business for most of my high school career.
Yeah.
I was really looking into international business when I started looking at colleges. But got to junior year and just working with the choir and working with the band that I was a part of, I just realized that I really wanted to make that part of my life. And so kind of changed directions and started looking at schools for music education and wanted to become a music teacher. So.
So what originally got you involved in music? Was it like a high school program or just like self-interest or
Like a band?
Like, the first involvement ever,
like what got you like set on that path?
my older brother and sister took piano lessons, and of course I wanted to be just like them. So I also wanted to take piano lessons, but when I was too young to do that, my grandmother would sit at the piano and kind of pluck out melodies with me sitting on her lap, and I don't know, I just fell in love with piano at a really young age, and I've done it since then.
So when I was in elementary school, actually, 4th, 5th grade, there was a local group in Marion, a Christian show choir
Yeah.
called Rainbow Singers. And so I started with that in 4th grade and did that all the way through. They had an elementary middle version of the group and then a high school version of the group. So I did that all the way through a high school senior year, and that was a really enjoyable experience. I think that's probably what got me hooked in the first place.
So kind of based off that, what kind of artists, present and historical, do you listen now that kind of give you influence?
I have a really eclectic taste in music. It really depends on my mood. Like, my Spotify playlist is not anything that normal people would listen to. Like,
Eric
it's
Whitacre.
just very, it's a wide hodgepodge. I don't know. I don't think I can pinpoint one.
Whole playlist of Eric Whitacre, right?
No, but I do love Eric Whitacre.
I've got 2 Spotify playlists that I listen to typically. The first one is like 80s rock music,
Okay.
Journey, Queen,
Yeah.
those types of groups. And then obviously I've got a film music Spotify playlist that I actually really like listening to as well. It's got John Williams and Hans Zimmer and those kinds of film composers on it. So both really good.
So going back to teaching, what do you think in your mind is the hardest part about teaching, not just music but just in general?
I don't know. I think motivating students can be challenging, and I feel like we offer a lot of external motivation ideas with like PBIS and things like that, which I think are wonderful initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes some of that internal motivation is lost on students, and like that's something that I can't teach my kids is like work hard because you want to work hard and you want to be better.
Right.
And sometimes that's frustrating, and I think with a lot of teachers you'll find like we were those self-motivated kids in school, and like that was just who we are, and so that lack of motivation is sometimes hard to figure out how to conquer.
Yeah, it was more second nature, not something you were taught.
Yeah.
I would say I think just right now in the whole teaching profession, when you look at it, it's just validating what we do and trying to, we've been, I don't want to say vilified, but all the stories that reach national media, they're the bad teachers, they're all
Yeah.
those kinds of people.
Yeah.
So it becomes a little bit difficult when you feel like you have to validate yourself and what you do all the time. So I would say that that's probably the hardest part right now.
So going off of that, what do you think is your favorite part about teaching then?
Mine is just making music with my favorite musicians. Like, my students are really awesome, and what's really cool about being a choir director is that we basically get new curriculum every year because we
Yeah.
change up the repertoire. And so when I taught elementary, which I loved, I did the same lesson plans 3 years in a row. And even though it was fun music and I liked what I did, that was a really unique part about teaching a choir, is that because we're learning new music every year, I'm never doing the same thing except for, fruitcake and
Yeah.
Hallelujah, of course.
Also, we're choir students, so we're her
Yeah.
favorite, just saying.
Precisely.
Well, I would just piggyback off what Mrs. Ridge said. We get to work with some of the best students that we have here in the district. It's really a joy to get to see them. Not only, a lot of teachers only get to see their kids for 1 year, but we get to see our kids over a span of
Yeah.
a few years,
Mhm.
typically. And so we get to build relationships, closer relationships with our students than maybe the typical teacher does, who only gets to see them for a year.
Right.
So that's probably the best part, and just making music. And there's always that moment when you're working on a piece and it just clicks and all comes together.
Yeah.
That magic moment. So that's kind of what fuels you.
Yeah.
Keeps you going.
So, like you guys said, you guys love the students and the musicians that you get to see them grow and become. Why do you think music is important to those students, to schools, and or like a community as like a whole?
So I'll start with that. There's a lot to that question, but I think we can get into a lot of different areas that are really beneficial for students. I mean, there's been a lot of studies on music's effects on the brain and all that kind of stuff. You could get really scientific here, but I think the most important thing is that it just gives students a place to belong. It gives students a place to connect. I think in this day of social media, where a lot of our interactions are now online,
Yeah.
having that place that you can go to every day where you can connect with people in a real way, in reality, I think that's so important. And then I think there's also an emotional outlet that music allows, and that's really healthy.
Yeah.
And when students don't have that outlet, that's when they run into problems.
Yeah.
And so I think those kinds of things are really, really, really important, especially these days. I feel like, just with the rise of, after COVID, just a lot of mental health issues, and just, I think, anything we can do to kind of help and aid in that is beneficial. So.
Yeah, so there's a lot in this question, and so I thought about the fact that there's benefits, like Mr. Richard talked about, like mental health benefits and physical health, can help regulate emotions, a healthy release of stress, but it's also something that builds teamwork, and I think that that's really important for our youth today. Is it's something that requires individuals to give 100% for the betterment of everyone, and it's not just kind of out for myself. So I had said that it's selfless, but it's also incredibly fulfilling. It's something where you're giving of yourself, but you're getting a lot back in return. And I think that some students might struggle in other academic areas, but they come to choir or band and they can really thrive in this musical setting. It's a different style of learning, and so it, for some people that just clicks. And you had talked about in a community, and music in a community can really bring people together. People gather at the Ritz Theater to see stage performances. They gather at that new, what is that?
The
E-Screen, yeah.
To see like their summer splash. They've got programs over the summer. And so the benefits of a healthy music program in the school system expand out to the community. And there's just, like you said, there's too many to list all of, but
Right.
that's what I have.
So what you said, something really caught my eye when you said sometimes when kids don't have that music outlet, it can cause problems. Now, do you think, in some forms of music, do you think that those can cause those problems?
we're getting into a heady conversation
No.
about I understand what you're saying. There are some
Yeah.
genres of music that are
Yeah.
a little bit more
Edgy.
edgy. We'll
Yeah.
go with edgy. I think, typically no. I would say no.
Right.
It's that old argument. Are video games making people violent?
Right.
No,
Yeah,
no. It's the violence with inside people.
Yeah.
It's not the video game that's doing it. It's not the music that's
Yeah.
bringing that out of them.
No, you said it and it just kind of caught my brain. I was like, oh, what about this? Type thing.
Right.
Yeah. Start right here.
So, in what ways can students be involved with music? Inside school, outside of school, whether that be extracurriculars or stuff here locally in the Tiffin community. How can they get involved?
Still
Okay.
pursue.
Yeah.
I made a list.
Okay.
And it's not even like all inclusive, but
Yeah.
there are so many opportunities here in Tiffin for people to be involved in music. So there's the curricular music courses that Tiffin City offers, which require band and music theory. There's the after school opportunities, including jazz band and musical theater. We just finished up Footloose.
Yep.
Heidelberg University has a community music program that hosts a lot of different events, including private lessons, group lessons, and musical theater opportunities. They also have a summer music program where they have a track for choir, a track for band, and a track for theater, and I think you can double up on those. The Ritz hosts a summer theater program for 2 weeks in June. I know that TU has programs. They've got different things where you can use their state-of-the-art recording facility and work with some of their college professors. There are literally so many opportunities for people to get involved. Now, some of those things might have cost involved. For example, Heidelberg stuff, you do have to pay for the lessons. You have to pay for the summer music program. But sometimes they have days throughout the school year where it's some sort of visitation day or whatever.
Yeah.
And those are generally free or maybe like $10.
Yeah.
Did they change theirs
So
to offer a t-shirt this year? I'm trying to remember.
So their honor band, at least, was, I think, 15. That was
Okay.
shirt and food included with
Okay.
that. And then their single reed day, which was for saxophones out, clarinets and stuff, that was $25. But same, you got your music,
Okay.
you got food and stuff. So
Gotcha.
super cheap, and it's a full day of
Yeah.
stuff.
And I know that some of the stuff, like TU did one of those solo and ensemble prep
Mhm.
days.
And
I
that
think
was
one
free. That was free. You had to sign up for it, but it was free.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
And then also, didn't this year they offer free private lessons, a certain amount of lessons through the choral program?
Heidelberg did, yeah. So they did through their local pedagogy class.
Yeah.
Their their college students had to get experience
Mhm.
teaching private voice lessons. So they offered free private lessons to some local high school students, so that their college kids could get the experience they needed. So we did have several students take advantage of that.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, building off this question, do a lot of these opportunities change for students after they graduate high school?
Probably yes. I'm assuming, those music days hosted at the colleges are geared towards high school students in preparation for becoming a college student. But I think once you've graduated, I know that Heidelberg has it used to be called the College Community Chorus. I'm assuming it's
It's still that, yeah.
okay. And so that is something that anyone in the community is able to be involved in. It doesn't require an audition. You just show up and rehearse, and I think they do 2 concerts a year. The Ritz has a plethora of shows every year that are open for auditions for anyone in the community, and they actually have people who travel up to an hour just to be a part of those shows.
I would say that we have a great local theater program here between RTTG, which is Ritz Teen Thespian Guild. If you don't know, that's open to high school students right now. They can be a part of that. But then after you graduate, we've got a lot of community theater that goes on here, but also in other area cities like Upper Sandusky, Bellevue, Findlay. All those places are putting on shows, and they're well within driving distance. So lots of ways to connect and to get involved in the community right now, which is great.
So since we've talked a little bit about theater and stuff, and I know since both of you have done theater and stuff that I've been in, what got you into musical theater?
I was in, I think, 2 shows when I was in high school. I went to Arcadia, and they only did shows every other year because of budget reasons. So I was in 2 shows while I was in high school there, and I enjoyed it. And then when I took this high school job, I had not done theater since high school. And then when I took this job at Columbian, it was just a supplemental for me to do the musical. It's not part of my regular contract, but I think it was kind of expected just because the prior choir director also did it. And so I knew that I had to somehow put a musical on. And I reached out to Mike Steyer because I had 0 experience doing a musical. And he's done a lot through the Ritz, and so I contacted him, and thank goodness he said yes, that he would help. And so he's been involved ever since then, and it's really fun. I mean, he's great to work with, and our directing staff is super fun, and it's really a great time.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. It started for me in high school. Did 4 shows in high school, and then continued working in musical theater at Heidelberg. I tried to do. I really wanted to do when I went to Heidelberg. First went to Heidelberg. I wanted to do the music education program, but also do a minor in theater. But I couldn't fit it all in. I couldn't fit the classes in, so I had to drop the minor. But I did take some backstage tech type classes at Heidelberg that were fun, and then helped direct a couple shows at Heidelberg as well. And then obviously I've helped direct a little bit with Columbian's shows, and then also I've directed a show directed the show at Anything Goes at the Ritz, and I'll be music directing Pippin in the fall, so anybody that's interested, come on out. We'll need some singers and dancers and actors for that show as well. So that will happen. I think auditions for that are in August. So
Nice. So, you guys both became choir teachers. You had some other job thoughts at first, but then found your musical path, I guess. What are some jobs in the music field that people don't often consider? Like the basics are like a band teacher, a choir teacher, or a director of some form.
Well, I would say there's lots of jobs that are music related. Music touches so many different parts of our life. We don't even really realize it. But sound technicians, sound artists, sound mixers, they're in high demand. So if you can do any of that, not only is that going to help you, but like if you're familiar with music technology and you understand looping and some of those different things, there's a lot of positions out there, and they're really becoming more diversified right now, where it used to be like you had to be in New York or LA, but there's a lot of positions even in Ohio, like Cleveland area, Columbus, some of these more Midwestern cities where you can find a lot of jobs. I also think if you're interested in stuff like marketing, doing something like that for business, having a music background or having knowledge of some of that kind of technology and some of those skills can be very beneficial in that kind of field as well. Did I miss anything?
Nope, sounds okay.
Okay.
So, what would you guys say would be like your biggest musical influence? Like composer, artist, present or historical?
So I've got two. And both of them are professors that I knew. They've had the biggest influence on me from Heidelberg. And so the first one is Dr. Jeffrey Marlott. He was my music education professor my freshman year at Heidelberg. Fantastic teacher. Learned so much from him. Unfortunately, he left after my freshman year. I missed out on a lot of learning from him. But he is amazing. He now teaches at the Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. But he's exceptional. And then Dr. Grant Cook was my choir director all 4 years at Heidelberg. Learned just everything I really know about choir teaching choirs, directing choirs. I learned from him. Fantastic teacher. He now teaches at Mount Union. So if you're looking for a school to go and you want to be a part of a choir, I'd recommend Mount Union. Heidelberg's fantastic. Obviously, you can't go wrong with Heidelberg, but Mount Union would be another really good one because he's really good at his job.
Mine was the same Dr. Grant Cook. So, like Corey said, he was our choir director at Heidelberg. And when I first took this Columbian job, I was really nervous because I felt like I was really good at teaching elementary. and I wasn't super sure about teaching high school.
Yeah.
But I was confident in my ability to run a choir rehearsal because I had witnessed successful choir rehearsals every time we had choir at Heidelberg, and so I just felt like I was really prepared on that part of it.
So, just to wrap up here, since we're getting a little short on time, what is there anything you'd like to just put out there for anyone who's maybe hesitant of joining the choir program or any music related program here at the school? Is there anything any words of advice or words of wisdom you'd like to share with them?
Yes, do it. Sign up. So
Just join.
I've had so many students join their senior year and then say, I wish I had joined sooner. And I'm like, I've tried to tell everyone. I've been saying this forever. And I know that some students say, oh, well, I'm really busy, and so I'm hoping, my schedule will be more clear, my junior year, my senior year, or whatever. When I was at Heidelberg, my piano professor once told me that you will never be less busy than you are right now. And that has lived with me to this day because she was absolutely right. And I was using the whole I'm busy excuse to get out of practicing piano. And that kind of floored me because she was right. As soon as one activity ends, something else takes its place, and there's always things going on. But make room, make time for the things that you're interested in. And if you're interested in music, sign up early, give it a try, because then you have the chance to build those relationships and those friendships. And choir and band really are kind of like a family because, like Mr. Ridge said earlier, you are with each other a lot of years, and it's not okay, I have this math class with this person one time and then peace out, never going to see you again. And so give yourself time to form those friendships and build that community.
Well, I would also say, too, is even if people are worried that they're not good enough, there's no such thing. I mean, everyone starts at a different place, and we're there to learn and to build skill and to develop. And so even if you think you're not the best singer, you're not the best musician, who cares, right? Just join anyways. I mean, if you practice it every day, it's like anything else. You'll get better at it, okay, and you'll improve. So join up.
Because I know from personal experience, I was in choir in middle school, had you for majority of it, then I had you for my 8th grade year. Came up to the high school, had you for my freshman, and then through COVID, half of my sophomore year. But because of COVID, it ruined the experience for me, so I put it down for a year and a half, and I picked it back up my senior year, and I'm glad I did.
Me too.
Because I missed it a lot.
Me too, Evan Slade.
I joined choir last year, mostly because I was bullied into it by Kennedy and Mr. Kenny. Now looking
Smart
back
people.
on it, it
Smart
wasn't.
people, right?
Yeah, now looking back on it, it wasn't bullying. It was more of coercion. But
Voluntarily.
and I'm very grateful that I did join because I had never sung a day in my life, and coming from where I did in Fort Wayne, there was not the same opportunity of being able to do band and choir.
Okay.
That was not
You
a
had to
thing.
pick.
You had to pick. In middle school, it was more like it was here, where there were pretty independent programs. So you could do stuff together, concerts would be on different days, and they wouldn't have overlapping activities. But once you get to the high school, it's a competitive marching band, a competitive show choir, multiple competitive show choirs, along with just a vocal choir. So you really had to pick what you wanted to do. So my thing was, I'm a trumpet player, so I'm just gonna play and do band and never do choir. And then I got here, and Mr. Kenny and Kennedy were like, "Well, you need to do it." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll be free next year."
And now you got a superior rating.
And now I
on
got
solo and ensemble. Look how far you've come, Ryan Carson.
And I sang the farm song, and I got a 1, and I'm very proud. But yeah, so it's a super cool experience. I've made a lot of friends through choir and stuff like that. So.
Well, and the other thing I would say is too, people don't realize it, but band and choir, we work on a lot of the same things. We work on breathing, we work on intonation, audiation, okay, hearing the sound before you sing it. So there's a lot of connections there, and so participating in one will help with the other.
So I know it's helped me a lot too,
Right.
for being in band.
Yeah, definitely, because in the beginning of the year we learned a little theory, and stuff in choir, and that's like really applicable to like band and stuff. And especially last year when I wasn't in music theory, there was a lot of stuff that I learned that's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense now. And then coming into music theory, there's a lot of stuff where like, oh, I've already learned that. Thank you, Mrs. Ridge.
You're welcome.
So yeah, so they overlap, and like the skill sets overlap a lot, and
Absolutely.
being in one can really benefit the other.
100%.
Do you have anything else?
I do not have anything else.
Any last words from our lovely guests?
Join choir.
Yeah, join
And
choir.
band.
And band.
Choir and band.
Do both.
All
Do
the-
both.
And theater. All
And
three.
theater.
All
Please
three.
do
them all.
theater.
Do all
A
the
good
things.
collection of wonderful teachers and
Mhm.
former and current musicians. So
So yeah, so this has been TC Talks.
I'm Evan Kahn.
This is Rylan Clarkson. Our
This-
guests, Mr. and Mrs.
Thanks,
Ridge.
guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining and showing interest.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
We'll see you in the
time.
next one.
Yep.